Nerve.
Hello, everybody. This is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. I wanted to come on and talk today, and I wasn't having a clear idea. And so, this is why the YouTube comments are good, because I allowed myself to get into a little bit of a dickering back and forth with somebody on my channel, and I think it's worth talking about. Again, I'm going to be talking about critical thinking. So you've heard me talk about critical thinking. I won't launch into an understanding about that at the moment. But critical thinking is absolutely essential for everything. This is, the more that I think about it, the more that I progress, the more that I evolve within myself. I have to say that the one thing that is continuously the most important thing for my awareness, not just for my awareness, but for my health, my happiness, my spiritual path, has been, if I boil it down, critical thinking. And critical thinking really isn't about being able to intellectually figure things out. Critical thinking is about knowing yourself first. That's the first step to critical thinking. There's no shortage of people on here, on YouTube, really smart people who throw around the word critical thinking. And what they really mean by that is, that we all apply it to ourselves. Everybody wants to think that they're correct. And so if somebody doesn't agree with you, then you're going to say, oh, they don't employ critical thinking. Atheists, generally speaking, in my experience, don't realize their emotional agendas. Scientists do this, but definitely when it comes to philosophy, when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to politics, critical thinking goes out the window. And it's not for lack of intelligence. It's not for lack of logical deduction. It's from a lack of self-awareness. So we live in a universe of energy. And we are emotional beings. We like to think, as humans, that we've got this big brain and all that, and we like to think of ourselves as sort of beyond responding to our instincts. But this brain is completely controlled by our emotional reality. And the universe, as I said, is a universe of energy. Scientists, physicists will come to that same thing. E equals mc squared. Mass equals energy. And there's another one that says energy equals, frequency. Which one could say mass is frequency. So manifestation, everything, I'm looking at the trees outside, I'm looking at the wind, and all of that is a manifestation of energy. And emotions are energy. And emotions are the things that we respond to that then drives us into thinking. I'll give you an example. My other channel, I've got another channel for people who are seeking to heal from abusive relationships with, people like narcissists and borderlines and things like that. And one of the biggest issues that people have in abusive relationships is this thing called cognitive dissonance. That's just a fancy way of saying people are confused and they take actions that they know don't make any sense. And then it confuses them. Why they keep choosing the abusive, alcoholic, controlling, whatever. They know, you hear this all the time. I know that I should find a guy who loves me, but I keep choosing the bad boys and I don't know why I do that. And that's because there's an emotional, on a deeply unconscious level, there's an emotional agenda that has, unfortunately, been programmed in an irrational, ineffective way. So no matter how much they think they know what they're supposed to do, on an emotional level, deep in the unconscious, they're driven to do things that they know are going to be painful. So we are emotional beings, and if we don't have awareness of our emotional agendas, all of this thinking up here is no matter how fancy of a dress we put on it, it's still going to be a stinking pile of garbage. And I used to make fun of the love and light mantra that says there's either love or fear. And now I have to acknowledge that I believe that. There's really only two ways to operate. There's either love or fear. Fear is what's underneath anger. Fear is what's underneath manipulation. Fear is what's underneath overthinking. So people who have really, really overdeveloped intellects are actually running from their emotions that frighten them. And in terms of the relationship of the universe, there's really only one functional relationship with the universe, and that is complete trust and allowing the universe to flow through you. To the extent that you don't allow the universe to flow through you, you are operating from fear. And to whatever degree you are operating from fear is what's going to result in a lack of flow of energy, which can create illness, which can create poverty, which can create relationship difficulties, name it. So it's very general, but it works. For me, what I've come to realize is that for me, in order for me to have that full flowing energy in my body, I have to be in a state of trust. Trust of the universe. Also trusting myself. It's also a state of love. It's a state of self-love to live in a state of fearlessness. Now, a state of love means that you do not require anything from anybody else. Nobody else is required to be a certain way or think a certain way. If you require people to think and be a certain way, then you have limitations on them and you are controlling them. Don't get me wrong, every relationship is a transactional relationship. But that doesn't, just because it's a transactional relationship doesn't mean that it's one out of control. So you're either trying to control people or you're trying to let them be whoever they are. So I'm aware that I live in a universe that is perfect and fully empowered and is a universe of energy, which means that I'm going to respond emotionally. That's how energy works. How emotions work. To bring in the mythology of my Norse ancestors, they believed that the gods, the celestial gods, one of the first things that they did in the formation of the universe was they created dwarves. And they created dwarves from the ambient energy of the universe. And it is at least some of the translations have it that dwarves are humanoid. They're not humans, they're humanoid. And they control things like, like the four directions are dwarves. And when you look at the names of dwarves, they always represent some kind of psychological construct. So the dwarves create the foundation from which humans are created. So humans are dwarves that have the soul in them. And this creates what's called mind. Mind is not intellect. Mind reflects the soul. The soul is perfect. The soul is infinite. The soul is all-powerful. So when you are operating from the soul, you're not putting any limitations on anything, specifically yourself. And you don't limit your emotional awareness, but you are aware of your emotions. But because you are not controlling anybody else, because you are accepting everything exactly as it is, then you have to take responsibility for your emotions. So what I've said, enlightenment is just one thing. Enlightenment is having complete, total awareness of all of your thoughts and feelings, which include your emotional agendas, your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, your impulses, having complete awareness of it all, not denying any of it, pushing it down, and not responding to them out of knee-jerk instinct. So impulses, that's what when I say the word impulse, it means something that tells you to go do something. So having all of your thoughts, feelings, agendas, desires, and impulses, but having the conscious awareness to know what is constructive for you and other people. So this is where you get out of your narcissism. Our narcissism is we have a thought, we have a feeling, we have an impulse, and we act on that. So to get out of narcissism, we have all of that, we accept it within ourselves without judgment, and then we ascertain what is helpful for others and ourselves, because what's helpful for us is helpful for others and vice versa. There's never a conflict. If there's a conflict between, should I do that for them or should I do that for me, it means that there's some imbalance within you. When you are fully in a loving relationship with yourself and with the universe, you will also know what is healthy for others in terms of your response. So what does this have to do with what I want to talk about today? So listen, unless you know exactly what your agendas are, your emotional agendas, your emotional desires, and unless you have zero judgment on them, and unless you have complete trust in the universe, you're going to fall into fear. We all do it. There's nothing wrong with falling into fear. That's how it happens. If you're in complete connection to your soul has no fear. Your soul also has no judgment. Your soul has complete acceptance of everybody. And if we understand that we've come here as souls and we've incarnated in these meat bags that have this computer on here, which is here to try and help us figure out three-dimensional limitation. And you've got this lower self, which is filled with all these dwarves, which are emotional entities within you. And if you understand that everybody has come here to learn how to integrate all of that, then you understand that people are going to act out of limitation. You accept that. You accept that and you don't judge it, ideally. The truly spiritual person has no judgments. None of us are that. I mean, there's no saint on this planet, because if you were, you'd stop being human. You'd phase out, you'd go beyond your human limitations. So I have it, And I feel pretty confident that you listening to me, that you have it to some degree. You know, I was watching something last night on YouTube that just blew me away, and it's so amazing to me when I think about it. And it has to do with these conjoined twins, these Siamese twins, and it's Siamese twins that it's a woman, and they have two heads, two completely independent heads, but one torso, two arms, two legs. And then they share, like I guess they're sort of like this. Here is like where the spinal column meets, you know, somewhere near the bottom of the spine. But it's like they have these two spinal columns, and each of them has a set of internal organs, and one head controls one arm, and the other head controls the other arm, and one head controls one leg, and the other head, you know, so whatever side they're on. When you watch them, they look like one person. And so I was trying to figure out, like, who's controlling the body there? Because normally when you've got two heads, Siamese twins, there's one dominant head that's in control, that's using the spinal column, that makes all the decisions, and the other one's just along for the ride. It's pretty rare to have two completely independent heads on one torso. So I was trying to figure out, okay, I can see it, and I'm like, okay, one's in control, and then they're talking about how they drive, and one says, no, I control this, and the other one, and then they steer together, which is amazing. But I thought, okay, but one of them is in control of the legs, because when you watch them walk, they're walking like, you know, one person. Nope. I found out the more I looked into it that one person is controlled, you know, the right head controls the right leg and arm, and the left head controls the left leg and arm. And I was just blown away. And then I read that when they were infants, that they had to learn how to cooperate. They had to learn how to cooperate to function, and it just blew my mind, the level of cooperation that they have to have. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only time that they get time to themselves where they're not in an active form of cooperation, and when they get up and where they go, the only time that I would imagine that they have any autonomy is when they're asleep and they're dreaming. But the rest of the time, there's no break. There's no, okay, I'll see you later, I'm going to go spend some time alone. There's none of that happens. Blew my mind. But the reason why I brought that up is because that's what we are. You know, every person. You aren't a single individual. You are a community. You have an intellect. You have a soul. You have a lower self, which has all of your instincts and desires. You have a physical body. You have an amygdala. You have all these different impulses and thoughts and things going around all the time. We all have multiple personalities within us, you know, different voices within us telling us this, that, and the other thing. We have conflicting thoughts all the time. You know, this is really one of the things that is the difference between somebody who has a mental illness and somebody who doesn't. You know, people who have mental illnesses don't have, you know, some of them don't have the ability to tolerate conflicting thoughts and feelings. So there's a war going on. So we have all this going on all the time. You have emotions that are constantly arising and changing and falling. You have impulses that are going through you all the time. And unless you know what those emotions are, at some point, you're going to go into fear. Fear says that you can't trust the universe to take care of you. Fear says that you are separate from the universe. Love, it's cute. I mean, people say there's either fear or love, and then, you know, I roll my eyes at some of it because when some people talk about love, what they're really talking about is denial and ass kissing. As you know, that's not something I do. Love means trust, an intimate relationship with the universe. The most intimate relationship you have is a trust relationship with the universe, that the universe is you, the universe takes care of you. Anytime you have a feeling of you need to control somebody else, you need to manipulate somebody else, it means that you don't believe that you're loved. You don't trust the universe to love you. And so now you've got to separate from the universe, and you've got to break the rules. You got to go steal something from somebody. You got to go manipulate somebody. You've got to go figure out what's, it's either you or them. It means you're not connected. But if I'm in a state of connection with myself, and I have complete love and acceptance of myself, that means all of my dark feelings. I have some really dark, nasty feelings. But if I love myself with those feelings, that gives me the ability to act lovingly towards myself and towards others, because then I have the ability to have empathy. I can't have empathy for other people if I don't have empathy for myself first. So I have empathy for myself, which gives me the ability to go, oh, that must feel like that for them. Oh, I don't want to make them feel like that. Or, wow, that would make me feel really good. I'm going to go make them feel really good. But you don't have an attachment to their, like when you give a gift. When you give a gift, a true gift is, I'm handing you this, $1 billion, or I'm handing you this whatever it is, this very valuable thing. And if it's a true gift, you want nothing in return. A true gift is when you're willing to give it to somebody, anonymously. Then it's a gift. If you want something in return, it's not a gift anymore. So anyway, I'm starting to babble in circles here. You get where I'm going. The point I'm trying to make is that in order to be able to make any progress spiritually, you must have acknowledgement of your agendas. And if you don't know what your agendas are, you're going to start to want to control people. You're going to want to control what they think. You're going to want to control what they do. You're probably going to tell yourself that what you're most interested is in them. But in reality, what you want is you want to manipulate them to make you feel safe, because you don't feel loved and accepted within yourself. All right, so that's a long introduction here. So as I said, I really didn't have anything to talk about, but I started getting into this pissing war with somebody online. So I'll just read you what he says. Bear in mind, if you leave a comment on my channel and you make multiple comments and you want to start some discussion with me about something, bear in mind, I may use it. I may use it to make a video. And when that happens, what ends up happening then is that I end up having all the control of the discussion. So, I might end up, offending you or hurting you or something like that to make my point. So I may do that here. Let's see what happens. So Austin Watley says, now first he's going to kiss my ass. By the way, I have nothing against Austin. I think that his motivation and his intentions are good. I believe that he, thinks well of me. But there's something that I've been teaching, there's something I've been saying that's been frightening him. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to have this discussion with me. Because the truth is, I don't know who Austin is. I've never seen his face. I don't know him. Austin knows me, because according to him, he's watched my channel for a while. He considers me his teacher. I'm really not his teacher because I don't know him. He hasn't engaged in a two-way street, which is when somebody comes to me and becomes an apprentice, they pay me for my time. There's now a bond and there's a two-way street. This is a one-way street where you're watching me. You have a transference, an experience, a projection, and you think you have a relationship with me, but the truth is that I don't see you. I just see a little green dot where my camera is. I don't see who you are. So we really don't have that connection. But I understand that's how this works. I've stimulated him, and what I'm trying to point out is I don't think Austin is completely aware of his emotional agendas here. And part of the reason I know that is because he wants to control what I think and what I say. He wants to talk me out of something that I've said that he doesn't agree with. And then when that happens, people get into, these intellectual, pissing matches. What's really going on is people are, they're debating over semantics or context or something like that. When really what's going on, they want to say, what you're saying affects me emotionally this way. Here's what I want from you. And they don't say that. And so it becomes a battle. And again, that's coming from a place of fear, and I'm not judging it, but again, I don't think Austin is completely aware of his emotional agendas here, so let's examine that. So he says, you have taught me so much about spirituality, martial arts, cultures, and traditions. I want to say thank you so much for that. However, so everything after the word however is what he really wants to say. That other stuff is, he wants to kiss my ass so that I won't have my guard up, but really, everything before however is nonsense. However, Thunder Wizard, even with all your wisdom on many other things, so apparently I don't have wisdom on whatever he's going to bring up, you still have a very programmed misunderstanding of the meaning of anarchy. Now that's a judgment. Doesn't mean he's wrong, but that's a judgment. He's not coming from his feelings. He's not saying what you've said has affected me this way. He feels a connection to me, and whatever it is I've said is potentially threatening that connection. And even though I don't know him, I've never met Austin, never have I emailed Austin or called him up on the phone and said, hey, I'm going to be talking about this, and this, and I want to know how you feel about it. I don't even know he exists. He still feels the need now. He's going to change my thinking. My point is that, there's a lot of people, and I do this too. You can listen to somebody and not agree with them, go, oh, I don't agree with them on that. Anyway, I got to go take a dump. They're not going to spend the time to try and talk you out of it. If you have to talk somebody out of their opinion, it means that you feel threatened. There's something that it means that what I'm saying is either potentially threatening his agendas, his feelings, his thoughts, and he doesn't want that. He wants to hold on to it. Or there's some other projection going on. Otherwise, he wouldn't need to talk me out of it. Point I'm trying to make is that Austin will be better served by knowing what his emotional reaction is to what I say instead of his intellectual reaction. All right, so he wants to program. So he says, you still have a very programmed misunderstanding of the meaning of anarchy. I don't think I do. It's not right or left. It's neither. Okay. It means no rulers, not no rules. I get the impression that you still have a lot of fear of the world without any government parents. So now he's going to turn everything I've said, this is manipulation, he's going to turn everything I've said, use the hot button words that I've said, and he's going to turn it around on me, so that I won't threaten him with whatever my thoughts are. That there would be chaos without them if they didn't make the rules and watch over you. Don't you see the contradiction there? A good parent raises their child to be independent and free, not to obey the will of others regardless of what's objective? Objectively right or wrong, or else you will be ticketed or jailed. People hold each other responsible for their actions. Now he's introducing an assumption. So when people jump from one blanket statement to another, what they're not doing is they're not filling in the blanks, and or they're not aware of the jumps in assumptions that they're making within themselves. So he's shoving his assumptions down my throat, and now he's going to move on to a conclusion of them. So he says, he goes through all this, basically that if there weren't any rules, we'd all be okay. And then he goes to the assumption that under these conditions, here's what he thinks will happen. People hold each other accountable for their actions and help those in need. That is an assumption. Kings and presidents aren't necessary for those things. In fact, historically, they have always prevented or impeded that. And then he's going to make another judgment on me, which again, this is a way of controlling and manipulating, and obviously I'm a threat. You are holding on to fears and insecurities. So first he introduces it and he asks me to think about it, and then he makes the judgment that that's what I'm doing. You are holding on to fears and insecurities. I consider you a teacher, but I ask you to look inward. So teachers are, I've had teachers throughout my life. I have a teacher. The way the student-teacher relationship works, you see me as a teacher, according to you, Austin. The way the student-teacher relationship works is, if the teacher has knowledge, information, or skills that you don't have and you want, you go to them for that. And then you listen. You listen and you take instruction, etc., etc. It doesn't mean that you completely agree with everything that they say or they believe. It also doesn't mean that you go to them and volunteer how you think they need to change. Again, that's manipulation. That's coming from a need to control. A student-teacher relationship is a relationship where both people have come together and chosen to come together. I haven't chosen you, Austin Wadley. You've chosen to come and watch my videos. It's okay with me that you see me as a teacher. But I don't drive up on my teachers and tell them where I think they're wrong. The only thing that I do with my teachers is I have a relationship with them where I'm there to learn from them. And to the extent that they give me information or skills that I want, I take that from them. If they give me information or skills that either through practical application or personal belief or whatever aren't useful for me, I just throw that aside. The only question I've asked myself about all teachers is, especially when I see them as being out of touch or inaccurate or unconscious or something like that that doesn't serve me, I say, okay, here are the limitations of my teacher, and then I say to myself, do they still have something that I want? Is there something that I can learn from them? And the answer is yeah. If the answer is yes, then I continue to work with them. And again, they haven't asked me. The point is, they haven't asked me for anything. I've asked them. I go to them to teach me. It's narcissistic and childish to then presume that because I've now accepted you as a source of information that now you have to take my, you know what I mean? It's yeah. So and when people do that, it's because they're threatened. The times that I have done that, like with my current teacher, we both understand that we're here to help me psychologically. So when I have conflicts about him, I've been around long enough to know that when that happens, it's almost always because I have a projection that I'm projecting onto him, some kind of daddy issue or something like that. At the moment, I don't feel that way. He's really wrong for saying this, and he shouldn't be doing that. And there's nothing Austin's doing here that I haven't done myself. That's how I know. But I know enough to know that whenever I do that with him, what's really going on is I have a projection, and I really want him to help me figure it out. But I am honest, and I said, you said this, and you did that, and that wasn't right, and all that. So it's great that you consider me a teacher, but when did I ask you? When did I come to you and say, hey, Austin, I'm teaching this and I'm teaching that, and could you just keep me in line and let me know, if I'm missing something? Am I unconscious? I will be unconscious. So just accept it. Since you see me as a teacher, what I'm trying to say here is, if you want to stay in connection with that flow, you got to accept me where I'm at. And being cooperative and being loving means you don't drive up on somebody who hasn't asked for your help and try and tell them what to think or how to think. Now, you guys come onto my channel. You see it. I don't go to your house and knock on the door, put a gun to your head and say, you got to watch my channel right now. I'm not forcing you to do anything. So if you come on and watch my channel, it's because you want to, for whatever reason. But Austin, I don't even know you exist. So again, why do you feel the need that you must correct me? Accept me in my limitations if that's what you've concluded. Take what works for you and throw the rest away. I consider you a teacher, but I ask you to look inward and ask yourself, are you really being honest with yourself about this particular topic of anarchy? I would love to go on that journey with you. So I'm pretty sure what Austin is responding to is that I was responding to somebody else who did the same kind of thing and left a comment about anarchy. He wasn't really saying it, but he, in a perfect world, this and that, and you can watch the video. This was K2's revenge that he's responding to. And the point that I made is that individual, I can't remember what his name was, that individual was projecting. And that I made the statement that anarchists, what they're doing is they're projecting their parental issues onto the government. And so this is something I want everybody to listen to. And, as Austin says, I want you to go inward and think about this. Which is that whenever you use the word the anything, the government, the universe, the archons, the elite, the deep state, the Republicans, the president, the Democrats, the IRS, the media. Whenever you use the word the and then there's a blanket statement after that, replace what after the word the is with mom and dad. So you take the word the out. So the anything, replace it with mom and dad. So I'll do it here. I did the same thing with the other guy's comment. I'll do it with this one. Let's see. So, however, mom and dad, even with all your wisdom on many other things, you still have a very programmed misunderstanding of the meaning of anarchy. By the way, this is obviously important to Austin, because all I did was sort of touch on anarchy. I was using it to underscore this idea of projection. I didn't make a video on anarchy and the benefits I could care less about that. So this is obviously his thing. This isn't the first discussion he's had about it. I stimulated in him and he's got to now correct me. It's about him being loved and accepted. If I can just understand him and what he really means, he'll feel mommy and daddy love him. Because teachers, the same as therapists, in case you didn't know that, the teacher is a projection of the parents. Gurus, whenever somebody has any kind of authority that you've engaged in a relationship with, on an unconscious level, they become a parent. So, Austin, this is really about your mom and dad. However, mom and dad, even with all your wisdom on many other things, you still have a very programmed misunderstanding of me, Austin, about the meaning of anarchy. It's not right or left, or it's neither, mom and dad. I'm not political. I tell you, I'm right in the middle, mom. It means, mom, no rulers. It doesn't mean no rules. So you said no rules, dad, but that's not what it means. So now he has an issue about how rules are imposed upon him, which is obvious because that's anarchy. I get the impression, mom and dad, that you still have a lot of fear of the world without any government/parents. That there would be chaos without them there if they didn't make the rules and watch over you. I mean me. I mean you. Don't you see the contradiction there, mom and dad? A good parent raises their child, me, to be independent and free, not to obey the will of others regardless of what's objectively right or wrong, or else you'll be ticketed or jailed, mom and dad. I don't want you to impose any rules upon me and tell me what to think and do, because then I don't want you to then arbitrarily punish me for just being me, mom and dad. You don't understand. If you understood my need for anarchy, mom and dad, you wouldn't then punish me. Thunder Wizard, I mean mom, I mean dad, I mean the government, I mean archons, I mean people hold each other accountable, people meaning him. Now he's projecting himself onto people. So on one hand he says all rulers are bad, and every time a ruler gives a rule or puts some kind of limitation that's bad, and then he turns around and says that people hold each other accountable. So here's the problem. I mean, he hasn't figured out who people are. He makes a difference between presidents and people. But this is the projection of himself. Now he's projecting himself onto the people. He's making the distinction between government and people. And he's the people. So now we're going to replace people with me. So I hold each other accountable for their actions, and I help those in need, i.e., if there isn't any parental figure telling me what to do, then everybody will act like I will. They'll love, and they'll be honest, and they'll take care of each other's needs, and that's simply because we've taken away the parents who tell us what to do. As long as we do that, everybody's like me. I'm a good kid. I'm going to be good. Everybody will be good if you just stop telling them what to do. I mean me to do. I mean them to do. I mean me. I mean them. Parents, kings and presidents, parents aren't necessary for those things. In fact, historically, parents have always prevented or impeded that. You, mom and dad, are holding on to fears and insecurities, which frightens me. I consider you a parent, I consider you a teacher, but I ask you, mom and dad, to look inward and ask yourselves, are you really being honest with yourself about this particular topic of anarchy? What he really wants to say there is, I want you to look inward and see if you really see my feelings about this. Or are you afraid of my feelings, mom and dad? That's what I hear when I read that. So I responded. I won't get into all of that. And I went into I bought into what he was wanting to do. He wanted to engage me. So he wants mom and dad to sit down and talk with him and listen to his feelings. I bought into that. I allowed him to pull me in. You can read it. I write this whole thing about, when it comes to no government, and the assumption, and I say you're introducing an assumption that if you take away a ruling body, a government, that people will just naturally be kind, cooperative, unselfish, and that somehow everything will just all magically come together. Like people hold each other to account and people help each other out in need. Well, that's an assumption. That assumption is that everybody is innately good, and that, what it really means is a projection of people will know what I want. People will know what I want and what I need, and they will love me and support me. And again, this is about parents. He's giving his fantasy of what he wants his parents to be, which is, again, the universe. The universe is your parent. The idea of a good parent, he's right about this, a good parent teaches the child to individuate so that the child will then be able to parent themselves. And that starts with this intimate, even though a parent may not say this, the end result is that a healthy child has an innate trust of the universe, that the universe will take care of them and protect them, provide for them, and they'll feel loved and connected. So his assumption is that if he takes away the bad parent, which is the government that gives the controls and the laws and all that kind of stuff, and the people, the bad people and the bad rulers and all that, if you take away all of that, then I will be a good person. So he doesn't see the narcissism in that. The narcissism is that he's projecting onto everybody that's not a governmental authority, that they're just like him, that there's these innocent children who are being controlled and disempowered, and if long as they just take that away, then I'll be a good boy, I promise, and so will everybody else. My take on Austin is he's probably young. If he's not young, I would say this is a very naive way of looking at the world, because it doesn't take into account that people have emotional agendas. So I go on to say, well, okay, so let's follow that. So let's say you have this anarchist state where there's no government and people are automatically loving each other, taking care of each other, and holding each other to account. And I said, so let's say you have a village, right? You have a village of people, there's no government, they're just a bunch of people and they live together in some kind of cooperative fashion. Otherwise, people are off just by themselves. So they're together living in some cooperative fashion, but there's no government and things are just going well because they love each other and nobody has any corruption or greed or fear or anything like that. And so they hold each other to account. So my thought is, okay, so these people who hold each other to account, what does that mean? So that means when your neighbor's doing something, assumingly, because he's a nice guy and everybody's good as long as they're not in government. So he's not choosing to harm anybody, but he's doing something that he needs to be held account for. So maybe I don't know what it is. He did something that violated somebody else's sense of freedom. So you're going to hold him to account. So what does that mean? Who's going to go hold him to account? You're going to go knock on his door and tell him, hey, listen, you got to back off. You know, my fence is right there, and those are my chickens. And, you know, you took a chicken without asking me, and I just have to hold you to account. So now you're being a policeman. So he says to you, who are you to tell me what to do? There's no government here. Since when did you become president? There aren't any rules, and, you know, you got more than I've decided. You have more than enough chickens, and I needed one. And, you know, as you know, we live in a society where we hold each other to account and we're there for each other when we need each other, and I need one of your chickens. So then you go to the other guys and you say, hey man, this guy, and you go to your friends, this guy stole a chicken, and, you know, the three of them go, yeah, that's not right. The fourth one says, I don't know, you know, I think he's right. You know, he should have your chicken. But the three of the four of you decide, no, we got to hold him to account. So then three people come together. The other guy goes over there. Now you got 3 against 2, and the 3 are going to hold him and the other guy to account. Then 5 or 6 villages come together and they decide they're going to get involved in that. And then they say, you know what? We need to have some people that we've chosen to be the account holder people. And, you know, whenever there's a problem, we'll go to them and we'll say, hey, can you guys hold that so-and-so to account? And what you've got a police force. And then you've got, according to his model, you've got people hold each other to account and people take care of each other. So what was his exact words? People hold each other accountable for their actions and help those in need. All right, so now you got somebody in need. There was a fire broke out. There was a lightning strike, you know, because nobody would set fire because, you know, everybody we're good, you know, we help each other out and we hold each other accountable. And since there's no rules, nobody ever does anything wrong. So nobody started that fire. The lightning came and started a fire. So it was an act of the gods. And the guy's whole barn burned down, and all of his chickens and all of his whatever got burned, and he's in serious trouble, and he got burned, and he can't farm for a while, and he's going to be out of commission. And so the whole village decides they're going to come together and build a barn, and they're going to, you know, whatever that is. But then there's that other guy that needs to be held account on the other side of the village. So 5 or 6 of those guys have to go and take the other guy to account, and then nobody's getting any work done, because everybody's holding each other to account and helping each other out in need. And so people get together and we go, we got to figure this out. We don't have any ruling body or government telling us what to do, so let's cooperatively sit together. And you know what? Hey, why don't you guys be the account holders? And but they say, I'd love to be an account holder, but who's going to work my farm? I mean, I got to eat. And they say, well, don't worry, we'll help you out. We'll send some people over to work your farm, or we'll farm extra and give you some of that. So you end up paying them to be the account holders. Now you got a police force. And then you got one guy, and then people say, I don't have time to do all this. We're doing all these meetings. We need somebody who can sit there and figure this stuff out. And, you know, again, there's no rulers, but can you just help us out? And can you be the guy? And then they vote to see which is going to be, oh, let's get that older guy. He's smart. He'll sit there and he'll figure things out. And all of a sudden you got a president. I mean, it's just so naive. He doesn't realize that what he's saying is he wants a democratic government. He wants a democracy. He calls it voluntarism down here. I mean, he gets to the point, he goes, he's trying to educate me on Latin. And then he says something at some point. I don't know, maybe he edited it out. Oh, here it is. He says, you just proved my point. What you described is not government, it's voluntarism. That's called democracy. Where do you think democracy came from? It's just so naive. But bottom line of all of it is that Austin has an emotional agenda. His emotional agenda is he doesn't want people to hurt him. He doesn't want people to control him. He doesn't want people to tell him what to do because he's afraid that they're going to, as he says up here, they're going to be ticketed or jailed. He's afraid he's going to get jailed because people won't understand him. Because his thing is, he doesn't think I understand him, even though I was talking to somebody else. So here's my take on all of that. First off, I never once talked about anarchy being good, right, wrong, or bad. I can see when anarchists, there's a difference between the philosophy of anarchy and anarchists. Anarchists, especially the violent ones that are out there, toppling cars over and burning buildings and, all that kind of stuff under the guise of anarchy, no rules, man. I mean, there's a lot of violence going on. Those are the guys I'm talking about. But I have no illusions about any of this. I have a complete awareness that everything is arbitrary. Like, I'm here in Australia, and that's an arbitrary government. There's this big giant continent or island called Australia, and I'm living here now. But there's this arbitrary thing called the Australian government. And the Australian government has imposed rules on whether or not people like me can live here. Now, technically, I can't. I have to apply for this thing called a tourist visa because under their rules, I can't apply to be a citizen yet. And I don't want to go back to the States, so I have to keep applying. I just applied today, and I'll know in a few months if I get, how much longer I get to stay here, if at all. And hopefully I plan to do that until the borders are open, then I can go back to doing what I was doing before, which worked really well. But I'm not unaware that it's totally arbitrary. It's an arbitrary thing. It doesn't really exist. It's an arbitrary, I'm watching, there's a street in front of my house and there are people, they drive on the left side of the road. And there is a 99.999999% assurity that everybody's going to stick to that. But it's an arbitrary agreement. It's technically a rule, but that guy, he could choose to drive on the right side of the road and there'd be nothing to stop him, unless another car's coming in the other direction. The difference is that Austin believes that these governments have the power to do things to him. He doesn't understand that that's coming from his fear. Now, his fear isn't completely unfounded. There's a lot of really hostile governments all over the world. And our government, the United States, who's supposedly a democracy, I am not at all unaware of the fact of how hypocritical that is. Democracy, American democracy, started technically in 1776 when the white male British subjects decided they also didn't want to follow the rules of their government. So they rebelled and they said, we're going to create a completely free society. But it was a free society for white, Anglo-Saxon, landowner males. Women didn't have any rights. Slaves obviously didn't have any rights. And there's they didn't even consider Native Americans at all. So it wasn't like they got together with the slaves and with the women and with the children for that matter. Austin would have been there and said, hey, I've got feelings too. And then we would get everybody together. That didn't happen. So I know how it's total bullshit. Freedom is something that is given to you when you do one thing. When you know what your emotional agendas are and you don't control anybody else. And what ends up happening is that you have this one-on-one relationship with the universe that no matter where you go, you are taken care of. If you end up in a country where there is an oppressive government and there are rules and it's unfair and all kinds of stuff like that, the universe is going to make sure that even in that, you're going to be taken care of. There are technically all kinds of rules I have to follow, but I'm telling you, nobody tells me what to do. The effective reality of my life is I do whatever the hell I want. Nobody's telling me, nobody's stopping me from doing anything I don't want to do. Did I say that right? Nobody's stopping me from doing anything I want to do. The things that they tell me I can't do are things that I'm not interested in. And, I'm choosing to follow the rules here. I mean, I could choose not to apply and I could be an illegal alien here. I mean, I'm not going to do that because I don't think it's necessary and it doesn't benefit me. But I also, because I trust the universe, because I have a loving relationship with myself and I have a loving relationship with the universe, I accept the arbitrary rules that are imposed by this people's chosen government. And it's out of respect that I follow their rules. Do I like that? No. If it were up to me, no, I choose to live here. I choose to live here. I choose not to ever pay taxes. I would choose to have all kinds of things happen my way. So what Austin isn't willing to look at or isn't able to look at is that he's got an emotional agenda. His emotional agenda is that he wants mom and dad to love him and accept him exactly as he is. But because that is perhaps too painful to look at, he does what we all do, and he's now projecting onto the government. And he wants to get rid of them. What he really says is he wants mom and dad to stop telling him what to do and to accept him for who he is. Like I would love for the Australian government to accept me for who I am, to see that I'm here and I've taught free classes here. I'm only putting money into the economy here. I definitely, even though I'm, out of the rules because they don't really want anybody above the age of 45. They just won't even consider you. Do I think that's fair? No. But I obviously think that any country would be lucky to have me. I have my own business. You know what I mean? I'm not taking away from other jobs. I'm not taking away from their social security or anything like that. And as true as all that is, I accept them exactly as they are. When people come to me about relationships and they want to have relationship counseling, people, they'll say, oh, my husband this and that, and he doesn't do this, and I'm having trouble with that, and, I understand. And so I listen to them complain about what the problem is, and then I'll say, okay, so do you want this relationship to work? Because if the answer is no, then I say, well, then you break up with them. I mean, that's it. There's nothing left to talk about. They say yes. I say, oh, good. Okay, so hopefully I can help you with that. So you want the relationship to work. So do you accept the other person exactly as they are and the relationship exactly as it is? And then there will usually be a yes if, and then I stop and I say that. Do you accept the other person and the relationship exactly as it is? And if they say yes, and I say, so you could continue to be in the relationship exactly as it is without trying to change it? Yes, if I had to. I say, okay, good. Now I can help you. Now I can help you learn how to make compromises within yourself, and maybe I can help you communicate better with your partner. I can't guarantee that they'll go along with it, but maybe I can help you with that. But I think I can at least help you be more happy where you are. If they say, no, I mean, he's having sex twice a week with the neighbor and I can't tolerate that. Then I say, oh, then there's only one solution. You got to leave. No, but no, there's not. I mean, you either accept things exactly as they are or you leave. That's all there is to it. When it comes to living in a society, If you don't like what the society is doing, I think somebody's bringing me a delivery here. I may have to run away from the camera for a second. If you don't like what the society is doing, you have two choices. You can either do something about it, which means get involved in things like, yeah, I'm going to have to take this, so I'll be right back. You either have to get involved and do something or accept things as they are. All right, I'll be right back. All right. And also there'd be things like mail. I mean, government is just one thing. There's rules for everything. We can't function without rules. And even though Austin wants to debate me on anarchy doesn't mean no rules, it means no government. But, again, the assumption is that we would just naturally know what the rules are. But anybody who's been in a relationship, which is supposed to be a cooperation, you'll know that things just don't naturally go perfectly just because you love each other. You have to set rules. When you have a group of people, somebody is going to end up either taking power or is going to be given power. So, bottom line is this, is that, again, having a connection with the universe means that you first love and accept yourself unconditionally. That means that you accept yourself with all of your faults. And that starts with first learning what your judgments are about yourself. Because if you can learn what your judgments are about yourself, you won't then judge others, which is a projection. You won't project onto others. And when you're able to do that, then you'll be able to accept people in their limitations. You'll be able to accept people when they're really limited. And then you'll be able to, in my experience again, the universe will always keep you in the safe bubble wherever you go. No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you'll always be taken care of, even if there is injustice flying all around you. You'll be taken care of. But you first have to know what it is you want from others. Like Gandhi says, you be that change. So, the question is Austin capable of living in a world where he doesn't tell people how to think? Where he doesn't try to change people's perspective because it makes him uncomfortable? Is he able to go, wow, that really makes me uncomfortable? Now, what would have garnered a more cooperative response from me, and again, Austin has to be able to get to that place. This is, again, I'm jumping ahead. But if Austin were able to say, I see you as a teacher. In fact, I just said this to my teacher. In fact, I'm realizing I just said this to my teacher. What I said to him was, I see you as a teacher. And when you say this, 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 and this, it's irresponsible because people listen to you. And what I came to realize was that I was individuating from him. That there are beliefs that he has that I don't completely accept or I disagree with. And I realized the only reason that bothers me is because I'm afraid of individuating from him, being my own person, having my own thoughts and my own feelings. Austin is having problems with that as well. He sees me as a teacher, but he wants to feel safe with me, and he won't feel safe unless I see him for who he is, and I see his true intent, and that I see things and believe things the way he does. Then he'll feel safe with me, and then he'll want me to be his teacher. But since I've said something that goes against what he believes to be true, whatever that is, that's made him uncomfortable, that's frightened him. So now he has to control me by talking me into understanding his point of view, so that he can have the student-teacher relationship. He can decide what the boundaries of that is. All right, so I'm starting to talk in circles here. I'm happy to take questions here. This is a question and answer. Best way to interact with me is to talk with me about your feelings. Austin, I haven't looked at it. I see your name there. Here's what won't work. Don't double down. That's not going to work. Don't try and talk me into or tell me how I misunderstood you. That's not going to help. Talk to me about your feelings. If you talk to me about your feelings, you'll get a much better response from me. If you have a question, please do me a favor, write the word question, and I'll be happy to take a look at it. Otherwise, let's see what we got here. God Emperor. Well, now we got to get rid of God Emperor because we can't have any rulers. Question. Is there a way to follow along the 90-day challenge for free? There is a way, and that would be if I were to make it free. So I'm not going to do that. So no. But God Emperor, everything that's in the 90-day, almost everything in the 90-day challenge is on the YouTube. All I've done is I've taken bits and pieces of the free stuff and I've put it together in a way so that, I think that it works for the, getting connected to your soul. So you can do what I've done, and I continue to do this. I'm doing it right now as I'm creating this new Taoist tradition. I'm researching and I'm grabbing things and I'm testing things out and I'm putting it together. I tested out some things last night, which I'm really excited to share. I'm still in the testing phase of it. But you can for free go and, I know there's 1,000 videos on there, but this is part of learning. Being willing to go and do the work yourself. What you're paying me for on the thunderwizard.com site at the different levels, even at the $25 level, what people are paying me for is for me to take a lot of the free stuff and a few stuff that I haven't taught and put it together in A plus B plus C equals D. So I've taken a lot of the time and effort out. I've done all the work, I've done all the research, and now I'm giving it to you, and here's the best and fastest way to make this work, and you're paying me for that. You don't want to pay me? I've provided all the free stuff. Go and do the work. So bottom line is you can get what you want if you're willing to put the time and effort. But think about the question you just asked. You just asked me to do a bunch of work for you for free. And first off, let me say, would that be fair to everybody who's paying? So think about the question you're asking. You're saying, I know a bunch of other people are paying, but can you give it to me for free? So the real question is, God Emperor, why can't you afford it? It's cheap. It's $55 a month. I mean, it's nothing. I mean, are you super young? Are you 10 years old? How is it if you're an adult that you don't have $55? I mean, don't drink coffee for a month. There's something you're spending $55 on. I mean, are you that incapable? I mean, times are tough. We're in lockdown, but I want to encourage you to believe in yourself to get what you need. This is what I've always done in my life. If there was, my teachers, when you see me doing that fancy little, all those sets that I was doing, I mean, I spent a ton of money learning that. I spent thousands of dollars to learn those sets. And I was happy to do it, and I didn't have any money. And if there's something I've wanted, I've always said, I'm going to find a way. I don't care if I have to go in debt. I don't care if I have to work twice as long. I'll do whatever I have to do to get the resources to get that thing that I want. I wouldn't be a good teacher if I didn't empower you to do the same thing. So if you want to be part of the 90-day challenge, do whatever you got to do to be able to afford that measly $55 a month. Una Veluspa. That's not a question. Okay. God Emperor says anarchy just creates a power vacuum. No one wins in the end. The thing is anarchy. Again, you have to know what your assumptions are. So the assumption is that, number one, anybody who has authority is corrupt. Now, that seems to be true. I mean, Donald Trump is doing a pretty good job of showing that. Uh, you know, I mean, in case you don't know it, there is an attempted coup going on. And it doesn't look like it's going to work, but it still could. And if there were enough people in positions of power right now, we could be watching a fascist state being created. I mean, General Michael Flynn is openly advocating for a fascist takeover, declaring martial law, and then controlling a free and fair election so that the results come out the way you want is called fascism. It's also communism. I mean, the extreme left, extreme right, it's the same thing. There's an attempt going on right now, and the only reason it's not going to work is because it seems that some of the independent aspects of government, like the judicial system specifically, the independent judicial system, is keeping it from happening. But this could be the beginning of the end. I mean, next 4 years, there's going to be, I guarantee you, there's going to be Republicans between now and then trying to figure out how they can, legislate their ability to negate election results they don't like. It's in the works. So, the assumption that the freedom of anybody in control means that everybody's going to be honorable. I mean, when has that ever happened? Name one time in history when that has happened. Even if you look at shamanic cultures, tribes within themselves, they war with other tribes. But even within the tribes themselves, you've got a chief. I mean, that was true for my ethnic ancestors. You had chiefs, and the chiefs were, had to prove themselves to be able. If they didn't have the ability to bring power and blessings to their people, they were killed. They killed them. So the chief was seen as a wizard. If he didn't have the ability with his wizard powers to not only settle disputes and make final arbitration, if he wasn't able to bring crops and rain and all that kind of stuff, they killed him. But that's an assumption. That assumptions usually have an emotional agenda. So the assumption that within an anarchist state, everybody's going to follow the rules, there's an emotional agenda of, I want people to be good to me. And it's a projection. And I mean, when has that ever happened? Listen, I'm not saying for or against anarchy. I'm saying it's all the same. It's all the same. You're dealing with imperfect human beings who are selfish and afraid, even if they have good intentions. As an actor, I used to play bad guys. For instance, even though I'm not physically built for it, I would have loved to have played Hitler as an actor. Because what's really fun is when you take a bad guy, right, who does these horrible things that's really evil and mean, and then you try and find within him, he doesn't think he's bad. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He thinks he's saving the world. Austin thinks he'd saved the world if everybody just did things the way he wanted, because he already knows. You see, if you get rid of them, everybody's going to work it out. I know how, in fact, they could come and ask me, and I would tell them how to do that. And in fact, if they wanted to all come together and sort of elect me as the benevolent ruler that doesn't control things, I would tell them how to have this society where we all work together, and then before you know it, Austin is dictator of the world. But, I mean, it all stems from that. Communism. What is communism? We all come together. It's the same thing. We don't have any rulers. So who's ruling it? Well, the guy who doesn't believe in rulers, we're going to make him the ruler, and then he's, it's for the state. It's for everybody else. I mean, fascism, the same thing. We've got to protect ourselves from the evil so-and-sos. And, it's all the same fucking shit. And the only reason when you can't see that is when you have an emotional agenda. I want people to like me. I want people to be good to me. I want to protect myself from mean people. One guy says, well, we have to have more order. The other guy says, no, we have to have less order. It's all the same shit. Okay, what else? Diamond Dane says, anarchy is a fictitious concept. There will always be someone in power whether you like it or not. I don't understand why this guy is bringing every teenager's political view into this. Well, I agree. I'm assuming Austin is probably a teenager. Because that's where you're having this. When I was a teenager, I was saying the same thing. I wasn't talking about politics, but I wanted my parents to stop telling me what to do. I wanted to be able to move out and be on my own. And I wanted to be able to smoke weed and drink beer. And I wasn't old enough to drink beer. And I should be able to have sex with that girl. And, you know, her mom's a Catholic. And it was all the same shit. I get it. Rune, question. How do you know if someone is projecting on you in an argument? Are there signs to look for? Everybody's projecting on everybody all the time. All the time. I'm projecting onto Austin because I see myself. I see my 17-year-old self in him, which is why I can feel the emotional agenda. So that's a projection. The question isn't whether or not they're projecting. It's the question of whether or not they're aware of their projection. And are they accurate? So the whole point of this is to become aware. To become aware. You know, if I'm in a relationship with a woman and she's able to look me in the eyes and say, I'm feeling murderously rageful at you right now. I'm really hating you right now for what you said. If she's able to say that and own her feelings, I will marry that woman. Because, you know, the marriage isn't going to work when everything's wonderful. The marriage works when people are fighting. And they have the ability to own their feelings and own their agendas and lovingly and fearlessly share it with the other person so that the other person can have empathy. You know, what Austin wants is he wants empathy. He wants people to empathize with him. He doesn't feel that those in government empathize with him because, as he said, they ticket him and put him in jail. But if you're on the other side of some guy who continuously breaks your boundaries, you're going to want somebody to come along and put that guy in jail to protect you. At some point, you're going to want the jails to be there. There's going to be somebody, I guarantee you. There's going to be somebody you're going to want to be put in jail. It's naive and narcissistic to think that that you aren't going to end up, you know, wanting control. We all want it. This is what I'm saying. Living in this state of, call it Zen, call it whatever, where I don't control anything. I'm in connection with the universe, and the universe supplies me wherever I go. You know, another way to look at following the rules, you know, laws is about having respect for other people. You know, I mean, the United States could have called itself anarchy because what are the mottos of the United States? Of course, they didn't follow through with that. It was very selective, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's anarchy. But they chose a form of government which preserved their form of anarchy, which was for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if you happen to be a white Anglo-Saxon landowner. I mean, if you're an Indian, forget it. I mean, we're not talking about you. If you're a slave, well, no, we're not talking about you either. Everybody thinks they're right. Hitler thought he was right. What I was going to say earlier is that I would have played Hitler in such a way where I would have really gone into the emotional agendas. And if you know anything about Hitler, you go into his past. When he was a kid, there's evidence that he caught his mother cheating with some Jewish guy. So then there becomes his thing about Jews. He was an artist. He didn't want to be this political leader. He wanted to be an artist, but he sucked as an artist, and he didn't get in to the art school that he wanted. Nobody saw him for who he was. He was an artist. Artists want people to see their feelings and their thoughts. And when somebody's looking at your painting or your sculpture and going, wow, that's beautiful, it's as if they're looking at your soul saying, I see you for who you are and I accept you. He didn't get any of that. He wasn't very good at relationships. He was excluded. He was minimized. And now he got to then protect himself from those evil Jews and whoever else he was blaming. It's all projection. To think, the narcissism, to think that, that your understanding of what's right and true is somehow going to prevent you from imposing your will on other people when you get emotionally stimulated. So it's okay for other people to have rules, but I don't need any rules, man, because, I love everybody. And no, somebody's going to need to put up a rule when you're out of your awareness, when you're operating from your emotional agenda. It's a lack of awareness to think that you're immune from all of that. So the signs to look for. So Rune, again, let's talk about what critical thinking is. If you understand critical thinking and the disciplines associated with critical thinking, then you can protect yourself from other people's thoughts and opinions. An argument with somebody implies that, here's what arguments are. Arguments are not about whatever it is you're arguing about. Arguing about politics or arguing about the toilet paper roll. Whatever it is that you're arguing about is not what it's about. Arguing is about trying to connect. Because this is, if you don't want to connect with somebody, you don't argue with them. If there's a guy in another town that has a completely different opinion than yours and you don't like the guy anyway, you're not going to argue with him. You're going to call somebody up and type them up, or you're going to put a comment on my channel because you want to connect with me and you feel that what I'm saying is hurtful to you and you want to stop me from doing that, so you're going to write a big long comment about how I'm wrong. And you're my teacher, but let me tell you where you're wrong, teacher. It means you want to connect. So when people are arguing, what they're really trying to say is, you don't love me, you don't see me, I want more love from you, or I need you to stay the fuck out of my space. And we intellectualize it so that we can win an argument, which is just a way of staying emotionally safe by not sharing our feelings, and then trying to control the other person to get them to give us what we really want. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. So when somebody's not arguing with you, they're like, I don't care. Do whatever the hell you want. I could care less. I don't care if you live or die. That's apathy. But no, you need to do this and I need you to do that and you divided it. That means you secretly love the person and you want them to love you and see you for who you are. And you're going to outthink them and tell them what to do, and you're going to try and control them in some way. So to answer your question, and to follow up with what I was saying, if you know the rules of critical thinking, then you can see what your agendas are, and maybe you'll be able to see what somebody else's agendas are. So the rules are, number one, everybody has an emotional agenda all the time, including you right now. So when you're in an argument, you ask yourself, what are my emotional agendas here? So in terms of Austin, my emotional agenda is I'm actually wanting to go back in time and re-educate myself. I'm wanting to give myself, my 17-year-old self, the freedom that I feel now. So that's my agenda with Austin. Now, because now you're seeing how I deal with myself. I'm very harsh with myself. I try to be ruthless with myself. I try and get to my own selfish agendas as quickly as possible when I'm able to. Because I know that if I'm not aware of my agendas, I end up doing damage to myself and to others. And I don't want to do that because it doesn't make me happy. So I'm telling Austin, like a parent, I mean, he's put me in that position. You know, he sees me as a teacher, so he sees me as a parent. So I'm taking that on, and I'm talking to him like I would my kid. Trying to help him see, number one, that what he's projecting onto me isn't true. What he's projecting onto me, as he said, is that he says, I'm afraid, and that I'm not being honest with myself about anarchy, and that it really, you know, what he's really saying is that I really have an agenda to change his mind about anarchy, which I'm not. I mean, if Austin can figure out a way, I'd be the first to sign up. If Austin can figure out a way to get rid of all government authority and set up a scenario where without any rules, everybody will love each other and take care of each other, I'll be the first to sign up for that. So I would say Austin might, if he's able to get past his own agendas, his own unconscious projections about mom and dad are trying to tell me what to do and how to think. If he can get past that and he's still passionate about it, if after he's resolved that within himself, he's really passionate about a utopian society, I think he should become a lawyer. That's what lawyers do, unless they're, ambulance chasers. People become lawyers. And why do you think all politicians are lawyers? Well, unless you're Donald Trump. Traditionally, if you wanted to get into politics, the first thing you did was you became a lawyer. What do lawyers do? Lawyers go to try and create a balanced society so that, we fight against injustice and or we use the rules to protect people. And what happens? They become politicians. What do politicians do? Politicians make laws. Or they become judges. Judges in the Supreme Court are there to say, hey, we think that this Constitution thing is a really good thing and it creates freedom for other people. And so the president brings all of these cases to the Supreme. I mean, it ends up being that. I think Austin, ironically, wants to be a politician. If he, after having looked at his assumptions and his agendas, if he still really wants to help everybody have this utopian society, he wants to be a politician. He just doesn't know it yet. But my honest feeling is I don't think that's what he really wants. I think once he realizes that this is his projection about his mom and dad, that he'll let it go and he'll move on to what he really wants to do. All right, what else? So I was going to tell you critical thinking. Everybody has an emotional agenda. Everybody has a projection. And the question is whether or not they're aware of it. Then there's 3 questions. So the first thing you do when somebody gives you in an argument, tells you something, you go, how do I feel about that? Does that frighten me? Does that offend me? What are my feelings? If I'm in an argument, it means I feel threatened. You don't argue with somebody unless you feel threatened. So I feel threatened, otherwise I wouldn't be arguing. What am I threatened by? When it comes to relationships, oftentimes it's that you want more love from somebody. What you really want is you want your wife to have more sex with you because that's how you feel loved. And you're going to argue with her about why is she going out with her friends tonight, and I thought you were going to stay home and cook. And what you really want to say is you want to break down in tears. You want to say, I miss you and I love you and we haven't had sex in a week and I really need your touch. Can you stay home? You don't do that because that's too threatening. So you start going, why are you going out with her anyway? And are you guys going to a bar? You guys are going to go look at, I know what you guys do. And she's like, no, that's what arguing's about. So you ask yourself, what is threatening about this argument? What am I trying to protect within myself? What is it that I want that I'm not getting? And then you ask yourself questions. The 3 questions are, when is something 100% true and 100% false? When is something partially true and partially false? When is something sometimes true and sometimes false? And you only ask those 3 questions when you're trying to figure out information like, is the world flat or is the world round? But that's different. That's somebody's giving me information and I want to determine whether or not, through critical thinking, whether it's true. An argument is different. An argument is, what is it you're trying to get from somebody? Again, acting is great. Acting is wonderful because, when it comes to acting, you know, a good actor, when they look at a script, they ask, what does my character want? You know, if the character is there and he's a lawyer and he's on trial and he's defending so and so, they don't ask, oh, let me figure out he's talking about this. They go, what does he want? When he's looking at the jury and he's talking about the rights of the individual, he wants to know, what does he want from that jury? Is he there because he knows this is bullshit, Rudy Giuliani, and he wants a pardon from the president, and he's going to create this impassioned speech so that he can manipulate them to get what he wants, which is a presidential pardon? Or is he doing it because when he was a kid, he watched his parents killed, you know, by the government officials, and he doesn't want to see that happen to anybody else, and so he's giving this impassioned plea to the jury, you know, to save this guy's life. You know, acting is really great because it asks all those questions. You know, what is it that I want? Vincent.thunderwizard.com. If you guys want to go and get a reading from him, he's one of my my certified astrologers. You can go take a look at his website, Vincent.thunderwizard.com. God Emperor, because they don't have a job, that's why. Now you have a reason to go get a job. That's the way to look at this, God Emperor. It's not, how can I get somebody to give special rules to me? Number one, everything you need is free. By the way, I'm responding to God Emperor, who said, was it you asking me, is there a way to follow along the 90-day challenge for free, which is right up here at thunderwizard.com. And I said, yeah, you can go onto the YouTube channel and get all the free, all this, almost all the stuff is there. You can create your own, you know, you got to do the work to get it. And then I asked him, you know, why don't you have the money, et cetera, et cetera. And so he answers me and he says, because I don't have a job, that's why. So this is great. This is how the universe works. I want everybody to stop and listen. Instead of making it about whether or not I am going to give to God Emperor free teaching, you know, why don't I have compassion for poor God Emperor, etc. Which, by the way, I mean, I do that kind of stuff in all that kinds of different ways. But in this case, what the universe is telling God Emperor is that something needs to change. There's something that you want. The universe is dangling a carrot in front of him. In this case, it's the 90-day challenge. And it's stimulating him to better himself and give him something that he wants. So the universe is saying, what are you willing to do for yourself? You willing to go get a job? Are you willing to go create a business? I mean, I don't have a job. I have this business that I've created because I don't want to have a job. So this is an opportunity to step up and change things. And this thing, 90-day challenge, is the carrot that's motivating you to do it. I wouldn't be serving you. I wouldn't be helping you achieve and become who you want to be if I gave this to you. The other thing I've learned is that something of real value, like what I'm teaching in the 90-day challenge, is I'm teaching you energetic practices that will change not only your energetic makeup, but your chemical makeup in your brain, so that people who struggle with success, who struggle creating the life that they want and following their joy, this is something you're going to have to work to do. And what I've found is that if it costs money, people do it. If I tell you this is a 90-day challenge, do this morning, noon, and night every day for 90 days, and then there's 3 phases. I've now just uploaded phase 2. If I tell you to do that and I tell you that this is what will happen and you'll get this from it, and if I charge you money and it costs you money, you're going to do it. You're going to like, I spent $55 a month, which again is just nothing. But like if I charged, I mean, it's all arbitrary. That 90-day challenge, I'm telling you, has the ability to completely transform somebody's life. If I charge $10,000 for it, I can guarantee you if you pay $10,000 for that thing, you will be there every single morning, noon, and night. You will master that because you paid $10,000 for it. And you'll wait for level 2 and level 3, and you will do all of them and you'll follow all of my instructions to the letter, even if you don't like it, because I paid for this damn thing, and you'll get something from it. I've taught people, I mean, the most valuable things. You saw me do the spirit fighting forms. I've taught that to people for free. Every single person that I've taught for free, they don't do it. None of them. They'd show up to class, they wouldn't show up to class. When it got difficult, because the emotions would start coming through and the power would bring them awarenesses that they weren't comfortable with, they'd walk away. It didn't cost them anything. If I force you ahead of time to say you're going to commit to me for 6 months and I'm going to charge you $750 per lesson, and you have to commit to this amount of time, and I'm going to take a down payment, you're going to show up to every fucking class and you're going to listen to everything I say, and then you're going to get the benefit of it. So that's why I got Emperor. That's why I'm not doing that. I feel for you that you don't have a job, but I guarantee you can find some way to change things. If you are committed to yourself enough, you can find a way. Let's see, God Emperor question. What's wrong with Trump? What has he done to you personally? Now, why are you doing this? Why are you taking this tactic? This is a really manipulative... First off, this isn't a question. A question is an honest question when I have information that you need. You're not asking me a question, you're psychoanalyzing me because you don't like what I've said. You're trying to, passive aggressively, make me feel bad or look stupid. The real question is, why aren't you talking about your feelings about Trump? I mean, those are the two ways to get my best side of me, is to share an honest feeling and to ask an honest question. This is a manipulative question. What's wrong with Trump? I mean, is that really a question? You already know what other people have said is wrong with Trump. It's just you're okay with those things. You're okay that he walked up to, that he's openly said that he forces himself on women. He grabs them by the pussy because he can get away with it, because he's a celebrity. I mean, that's one. You want me to keep going? It's just that doesn't bother you. So you know the answer to that question, so don't bullshit me. What has he done to you personally? What does that have to do with anything? Or did you research and that's why you believe he's not someone who should be president? I don't need to research. I mean, all I have to do is just listen to his tweets. I mean, if I just listen to his Twitter account, I know what he's doing wrong. And then, of course, I do actually watch actual journalism. So, God Emperor, I just felt a real good connection with you. You were having an honest question, and then you try this bullshit on me. Now I don't feel, I'm just telling you, emotionally, I don't feel motivated to help you. Because you weren't honest, and I don't like that. I don't like that kind of passive aggressive. I don't like passive aggressive because it's weak. It's the kind of weakness that I judge. It means somebody doesn't have the balls to come out and say what they really think, what they're feeling. Like if you were to say, I like Trump because I'm afraid of people stealing my job. I like Trump because he says tough things about immigrants, and I don't like Islamic terrorism. And if you said that and you were honest about it, then we could have a discussion about, okay, well, let's take a look at whether or not Trump really is helpful in that or not. But I wouldn't ever attack your feelings. But that was very just pussy ass, backhanded, passive aggressive. What has Trump ever done to you personally? I mean, that's just cheap. You know that. You're smart enough to know that. So man up. Look me in the face, own your feelings, own your agendas, ask me honestly, share your honest feelings with me, and I'll be there with you. I may not have come to the same conclusions, I may disagree with you, but I'm never going to judge you for your feelings. And if you can learn how to do that, I think you'll be more successful in terms of your financial status. I think that may have something to do with it. Maine, question. Did you know that 73%? All right, so that's not an honest question, you racist motherfucker. Fuck you for bringing that shit onto my channel. It's not a question. This person says, did you know that 73% of slave ship owners were ethnic Jews? So fucking what? The whole idea of non-racism is that everybody has negativity about them. We could say that about blacks too. Did you know that all the slave traders in Africa were black? I mean, I have such anger towards you right now for your hypocrisy and your childish fear, your racism. Who gives a shit? I just gave myself a headache. Vincent.thunderwizard.com says, Maine, I'll give you one more chance. You say shit like that again, I'm going to block you, period. I don't want the aggravation of having to deal with that horse shit. You're obviously new to my channel, so you're welcome to my channel, but I won't tolerate that horse shit on my channel. Vincent.thunderwizard.com, the 90-day challenge has changed my life. I'm more motivated to succeed than I have ever been. Congratulations. Thank you for that. God Emperor says, I like Trump because he says tough things and means it. So what? What's his name? Maine just meant what he said. Maine just wanted you to know that according to him, most Jews are slave owners. In other words, it's okay to be, prejudiced. It's okay because, look at what Jews did. In other words, I'm white and, I don't want to have the guilt for my ancestors being slave owners. So did you know the Jews did it? Pussy horseshit. So you like Trump because he says things that make you feel safe. He doesn't say tough things. I say tough things. You know who else says tough things? Black Lives Matter says tough things. Do you like them because they say tough things and they mean it? Do you like them? So it's not about tough things. It's about people who say things that make you feel safe. That's what I mean about being honest. He says it like it is. When people say he says it like it is, no matter who they're talking about, what they mean is he says things the way I feel. I was watching, this was, again, things are starting to calm down. I was really worried and upset. I almost made a whole video on how we're going to see the end of democracy in the United States, and I decided not to put it up. Things are starting to calm down, and it looks like, here's my prediction now about Trump. My prediction now about Trump is that Trump is going to become less and less important when he's finally out of office. He's going to start to dwindle, and he's going to become kind of a joke. And people are, him and his whole movement are going to be looked at for what they are, which is this fringe, irrational, nonsense. That's my prediction. We'll see if I'm right or not. But I was watching earlier on YouTube, and these were guys who were Democrats who were pro-Trump. And these were the kind of Trumps that, I love Trump and he can't do anything wrong. He's the best president we've ever had, et cetera, et cetera. And the vote never, Biden isn't the president. And I can't really say why, but I just don't believe it. And they were both sitting there, and they both said, we used to be Democrats. I think probably because they were, they're in a union, so they're working class people who, Democrats and unions usually go together. I think that's who these guys were. They were union workers. And so people who are union workers, want increased wages and equality and all kinds of other things. And ironically, those are the people who go after don't tread on me and don't take my guns away. They ironically want socialist things like unions to preserve their income, but they don't want, whatever they think else is gonna happen in a socialist society. And again, I'm not pro or anti-socialist. But they said, But we always said when somebody comes along who talks like we do, we're going to vote for him. That is pure projection. They're not voting for him because of any rational political philosophy or any plan of action. And like God Emperor says, I like Trump because of the way he talks and that he means it. It means that you can project into him and emotionally connect. It's all about feeling emotionally connected. Nothing in that statement says, and I've looked at how it benefits the economy, and none of that. And these guys said the same thing. They said, when somebody else comes along who talks the way we do, we're going to vote for him. And it's the same thing that happened, how long, again, there's nothing new here. When George Bush was running for office for the first time, how long ago was that? That must have been 8, 12, 20 years ago? Was it 20 years ago? Holy crap. So some of you alive who think you know what Trump is all about, you haven't been alive long enough to know that this is just a recurrence of the same thing. The same, Trump is a little more extreme, but it's the same, going in the same direction. Sarah Palin, who's the Barbara Bachman, is that her name? I mean, it's all the same thing. Every election cycle, one of these voices comes up and talks that way, at least one. And so when George Bush was running for office, somebody, very famous quote said, I voted for him because I feel like I could sit down and have a beer with him. Which means that you feel an emotional connection, which means that you're wrapped up in your narcissism. It means that you want to be president. This isn't a whole lot different from what Austin is saying. Austin is saying, I want to make the decisions and say who does what because I know that I don't need to be told what to do and I'll follow the rules and I will help people out and, I'll then, also sort of be a police force and keep people at, it's the same thing. It's this narcissism of I'm not being seen, I'm not being loved. And by the way, people who say things like that, like I like the way he talks and he means it, or if somebody comes along who talks the way I do, I'd vote for him, or I'd love to have a beer with him, I'm going to vote for him. These are almost always, and I don't know if this is true with God Emperor, interestingly enough, these are usually people who are uneducated, especially about politics. They don't know how politics works. And when you hear politicians talking about the Dow Jones and the this and the that and the, the such and such accord and the, it's just noise to them. They don't really know what it means. And then they get into the, I don't know what he's saying. He's in authority. I'm afraid they're going to do something I don't like. My parents did things I didn't understand and they were hurtful to me. So therefore I feel this way about this guy. But then here's this average six-pack Joe and he talks the way I do and he means it, which means I can feel him. So, that means that you don't feel the other guy. But then there's a whole people on the other side of the aisle who feel them and don't feel your guy. So then nobody's looking at what is objectively being said. It's all about how I'm feeling, and it's all me. I'm projecting me, and I want to feel good, and I want to feel safe. That's what racists are. This is my new enemy up here, Maine. Racists are people who like being around people they feel connected to. And if somebody uses somebody's skin color, then they feel them, so they like being around them. If it's a cultural thing or a religious thing, they feel them. But it's all narcissism. All right, let's see what else. All right, so Diamond Dane and God Emperor are getting, he's helping God Emperor get a job. Good for him. Eric Stoop, question. What do you believe needs to happen in the States to make people more united? I haven't said that I think that there's anything. I don't have an opinion about that. I'm not political. I mean, I respond when I see politicians doing things that I think are destructive. And without a doubt, Trump is trying to destroy democracy. And I'm sorry that a lot of people can't see that, but it's nothing really nefarious or even evil genius. He just can't stand losing. He doesn't want to be president. He never did. That's the thing. He never wanted to be president. He just didn't want to lose. And now he doesn't want to lose. He even said, I mean, listen to his own words. He says, in one of his tweets, he says, I'm not going to say losing. I'm just going to say not win. But you and I both know he wouldn't hesitate to call somebody else who didn't win a loser. He has no problem calling anybody else a loser, but he can, quote, not win. It's just that he didn't lose. Come on. I mean, it's just transparent. And the thing that blows my mind is that almost half of the population is right there with him. That's what blows my mind. Trump isn't a politician. So it's not even about having a political discussion about what Trump represents, because he's not a politician. He doesn't have the first clue. He doesn't even understand how politics works. He doesn't understand how the laws work. He doesn't understand the three independent aspects of government. He doesn't understand that the Supreme Court is a completely independent thing and doesn't make rulings. He doesn't understand any of it. I mean, if you listen to any research, people will say, generals in the military have said, oh yeah, when you talk to Trump, you have to bring pictures because he can't read and he doesn't understand things very well. I mean, he's a moron. It's not about politics now. It's about having a selfish, destructive child. And he's not running anything. It's not like he's running the government. Nothing's getting done. I mean, do you realize that the State Department is non-existent? I mean, that there's no infrastructure left. He's nuked the whole infrastructure because he's fired everybody, because at some point somebody is not going to bow down to his childish narcissism. And even, Bill Barr, great example. Bill Barr, this guy who he appointed, who's upheld all kinds of crazy, things and has clearly been a fan of him. He now does one thing. He opposes Trump in one thing and Trump fires him. He's fired everybody. It just blows my mind people can't see that. This isn't about politics for me. He's just an idiot. He's a destructive idiot. And 40% of the population of the United States is uneducated and, in my experience, emotionally immature. And that's why they love him. They have as little knowledge about politics and what he's accomplished or not accomplished as anybody else. And like God Emperor says, I like what he says. He makes me feel good. He talks tough and means it. I talk tough and mean it. And I'm opposing Trump. So what are you going to do now? Do you like me because I talk tough and I mean it? And I'm telling you that Trump is a moron? Are you that easily swayed? Or are you now an enemy of mine because Trump says some core thing that you like let's get rid of the Muslims, or let's build a wall, or whatever it is that you like that he said, that he meant? I mean, do you see the narcissism? And not just in you, I mean in all of us. I'm talking about myself too. This is the point. Self-knowledge. The whole point of this video is when you're aware of your emotional agendas to everything, and you can own them. Like, for instance, Trump frightens me. He frightens me because he's totally unpredictable. He doesn't have a code of conduct. His method of functioning is whatever impulse is flying through him at the moment. And all he cares about is how people see him and feel about him, and does he get what he wants. He frightens me. That's my emotional agenda. I don't want him in control because I'm afraid he's going to create an evil, destroy, what my fear is he will give Austin his wish. He will destroy any semblance of government there is, which is what's happening. We're on the verge of civil war over this. And the states are now trying to come together. Those states, or at least the governments in some of these states are trying to come together to illegally overturn the election so that their guy wins. That's called a coup. That's called sedition. Now, if people were honest, what I was going to say in my previous video about, is this the end of democracy? I was going to say, listen, Trump voters, stop pretending that what you want to do is have a free and fair election. Because, let's just be honest, that's not what you want. What you want is you want your guy in office. You like him. You think he protects you. You feel a strong emotional bond. You just want him to be in office even though more than half of the population disagrees with you. And because you believe you're right and because you believe he's going to protect you and make you safe, you want to invalidate other people's votes. Not necessarily because you don't believe in voting, but because this time it's so important to you, you want to invalidate the vote. And so what I was saying is, instead of trying to pretend like you want this to be some, change it and make it democratic, you're not being honest. Just be honest and decide that you want to start a civil war, that you want to rebel. The founding fathers of the United States, if they had lost the war, they would have been traitors. They won the war, so they're heroes. So it's okay to decide that you want to rebel against a government. I'm not suggesting you do. But in terms of an emotional, it's okay to decide, I don't like this government, I want to change it. I don't like this, I don't like democracy because there's a chance that more than half of the population can do something that I am really afraid of, and so I don't want that. Just admit that that's how you feel. I'll have much more respect if people said, you know what? I know better than the other half of the country, and I think that my guy should be in. So like Flynn openly, General Flynn openly says to Trump that he should declare martial law, which means to dissolve the democratic representational government, and that there's only one person in control, Donald Trump, who then takes the military in and then conducts a new election in his favor. That is sedition. That is setting up a monarchy. That's setting up a tyrant. Just admit that what you want to do is make Donald Trump a tyrant because you believe that he's going to protect you. I would have much more respect for that. Instead of trying to pretend that it's all about democratic free elections, because that's not what you want. It's clear to anybody with eyeballs. And in order to do that, though, you'd have to know what your emotional agendas are. You'd have to be honest and say that. I can't bring myself to that. I can relate to wanting to invalidate, a bunch of people's votes if I think that they're wrong. Like imagine, this is what happened in Germany. In Germany, the majority of the population, either through intimidation or through wanting whatever else, went along with Nazi propaganda, that the Jews were doing it, et cetera, and that, Hitler should be, I don't know if you guys know this, but this is exactly what is happening in the United States right now is exactly how Hitler took power. He was chancellor. And I believe there was a president, I'm not sure, it was something equivalent to a president, and then there's a chancellor. So there's like a president and a prime minister. And they were a check on each other. And I believe the president was the only person who could fire the chancellor. And Hitler had been elected as chancellor, and he then manipulated government through intimidation and other things, exactly like Trump is doing. And he got rid of the president, and he fused those two, and he became both president and chancellor, which means he was the only person who could get rid of himself, and he then enacted and legitimized having complete power over the government, which he never released. He said, I'm only going to temporarily take these powers. That's what Flynn is telling Trump to do. He's telling Trump to declare martial law, taking complete power temporarily so he can change the outcome of the election. This is how it happens. And it happens because people don't know their own emotional agendas. The people in this country who think that I like the way Trump talks because he talks tough, which for whatever reason you like tough talking people, and you like that he means it, which means that you feel you can trust him, which means that emotionally you feel connected to him. But for some reason, you don't trust other people who mean it. You know, Biden, do you not trust him? Do you not feel him? You think he's lying? Do you not trust Kamala Harris when she means what she says in her tough talk? I mean, that's bullshit. It has nothing to do with how he talks. It has everything to do with how you feel. And there's nothing wrong with that if you can own it. Because then you can go, you know, I really like what that person says because it feels good to me, but if I think about it, then you have the ability to have your mind open enough to make an objective decision. But as long as it's, you know, what really people are saying is when their guy doesn't get elected, and their main reason for it is, I like the way he talks, I feel him. What they're really saying is, if you elect somebody else, it feels to you as though somebody has said your feelings don't mean anything. Which isn't what they're saying. They're saying you can have your feelings, but you know, we disagree on the direction and the policy. But for you, it feels like my feelings are invalidated. Screw that, to hell with them, let's overturn this election. You can't tell me how to feel. When you can't tell the difference between your feelings and objective reality, that's when people like Trump and people like Hitler end up manipulating whole entire populations. This is how it happens. What else? Jacob Hoy says, question, I remember you spoke of a Kali mantra not being the right one for you. Yeah, and? I don't, was there something else that you wanted to say there? Yeah. That's not a question. That is a statement. I did say that. And? The point being is that there's a way to determine, in the Vedic astrology that I do, there's a way to determine whether or not a specific deity will work for you. For instance, Kali is a Saturn deity. So if in my chart Saturn was a planet that, you know, was good for me to worship or do a mantra to, then there's a way to find out in my chart what the syllables would be for the beginning of each. You know, for instance, if I wanted to worship Mars, a good Mars deity would be Angaraka, because the letter A vibrates well with my ascendant, with my moon. So if Kali, the syllable Ka, vibrates well with somebody's moon, and they want to worship Saturn, then Kali would be a good mantra to do. For me, Kali is not a good mantra to do because Ka does not align well with my moon. I've now covered probably any question you could have been asking me about that. God Emperor, question. How do I get better at asking meaningful, non-manipulative questions? That's a very good question. And my hair is off to you for having the willingness to take a look at yourself like that. Well, I think I've answered that. Asking me questions, if you ask me a question based on that you think there's information that I have that you don't know, like how do I know if Kali is a good mantra for me? That's an honest question. You're asking me, you know, in some kind of non-manipulative way to give you some information. If you have something to point out, if you disagree with me, I mean, I may not look at it, but if you say, when you said this, it made me feel this way. I think you're being unfair because you said this. Or, you know, Austin came as close as he could. He said, I think that you're being that you're not being honest about your fears about the word anarchy or something like that. That's about as close as you could get. I mean, he ended up being manipulative and judgmental and all that, but he was, he was as close as he could get without coming to full awareness. So at some point, I have to allow people to be in wherever they're at. So I don't know if that answers your question. Ask me a question about some knowledge that you don't have that you think I have, or share your honest feeling. And be open. I will never judge you for your feeling. Now, if you turn around and start judging me, then I might respond and react. If you start saying, I think you're afraid because you said this, when what you really want to say is, when you said this, Mahadeva, I didn't like the way it made me feel unsafe. When the way you talk about Trump, for instance, this might be, I'm not saying you're feeling this way, but if you were to say, the way you're talking about Trump really angers me because I think Trump really is working for me, I feel safe with him, I wouldn't judge you for that feeling. In fact, I would reward you for having the honesty to be able to speak it. I would disagree with you, but then we can have a discussion, because then we can look at it. So you like Trump because he talks tough and he means what he says, but he also meant what he said when he said, yeah, I just walk up to women and grab them by the pussy. I can get away with it because I'm they let you do it, because I'm a celebrity. I mean, that's a horrifically shitty fucking thing to say. Let me give you something else Donald Trump said. I mean, you said you want to be in security. Maybe you feel some positive feelings toward the military. This was when he was campaigning. And I still, to this day, I am befuddled. How is it that this didn't become a meme that we're still talking about to show his character? This was before he was elected, and he was campaigning. And he announced that a Purple-Hearted veteran he wanted to come up and give him his Purple Heart. And so Trump said, there's a guy here, I'm told there's a guy with you have the Purple Heart and you want to give me your Purple Heart? Come on up. Now, I hated Trump then, but I honestly thought that he was going to use this in a way to manipulate the audience. And if I were him and that were coming up, this is what I would have done. The guy would have come up, he's an older guy, like a World War II vet or a Korean vet or something like that, and he's not rich, and he's giving away this Purple Heart to this presidential politician candidate. If I were that guy, I would have said, sir, thank you for your service. I cannot accept it. You almost gave your life for us. And I would have held his hand up and I would have pointed to the Purple Heart and I would have said, no, sir, you have my thanks. Here's my flag pin. You take it and you go sit back down. And everybody would have stood up and clapped, and I would have used that to make myself look like a patriotic, right? He doesn't do that. I thought that's what he was going to do. The guy comes up. And he was just what I thought. He was an older guy from the Korean War, I think, and, wounded. And he says to the whole audience, it's being televised, and he says, I believe that you're going to save this country, so I'm going to give you my Purple Heart. And Trump took it. Now, I thought he's going to look at it and then he's going to give it back and do it. He looked at it and he put it in his jacket pocket, thanked the guy, and then went on like nothing happened. And I was like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? Are you kidding me? He took the guy's Purple Heart and stuck it in his pocket, and he didn't even mention it after that. I want you to think about that. What did Trump do with that guy's Purple Heart? Has he put it on his mantelpiece? Did he earn that? This is the guy that you think means something and it talks tough? I still, to this day, I don't know why. I don't know why that isn't continuously being replayed to show this guy's character. So I really saw that this guy's not some evil genius that I don't like. He's just a moron. He's just an idiot. He's just a narcissistic child. He doesn't have the first clue what any of that means. He just thought somebody gave him something. He'll just take whatever. It still blows my mind that 40% of the population thinks this guy's God. Let's see what else. question, Eric Stoop, what do you believe needs to happen in the States to make more people united? People aren't united. So I don't know what it's going to take to answer your question. I don't know that politics are going to save it, because democracy is a gentleman's agreement. And people are trying to destroy that gentleman's agreement. Every time Trump goes on and says that, that he makes these unproven, actually disproven, debunked. Every single one of his claims has been completely debunked in a court of law by Republican judges that he's appointed. Every single one. I mean, the evidence is not there. Every time he does that, he's trying to destroy this gentleman's agreement called democracy, which says, I may not like what you want, but the majority wants it, and I agree as a gentleman to accept it. And then you have these states. We don't have just one giant country. We have a bunch of little countries called states that come together and form this big country, sort of like a colony of viruses or something. And in order for it to work, all of the states have to choose to work together and choose to follow the law and choose to respect the sovereignty of the other states' elections. And now you've got, I don't know how many Republican governors in different states who are trying to go to the Supreme Court to invalidate the way that other states do elections, because if they do that, they can get their guy in. They're wanting to destroy the gentleman's agreement of democracy. I mean, that's what's happening here. So how do we get people who are on the verge of civil war, how do we get them to agree? They have to choose to agree to follow the rule of law. The rule of law is what keeps this gentleman's agreement going. But all it takes is for one state to decide not to do it. All it takes is for, something. And when the average person says, I don't like what the election is, I refuse to accept it, and I'm going to go out in the street and do some violent protest, they're destroying the gentleman's agreement of democracy. So, I don't know. I mean, this is what I'm doing. Part of what I'm doing is I want to teach people how to have awareness of their emotional agendas. If we can police ourselves, be aware of what our emotional agendas are, and then know, okay, I'm acting out of my selfishness here because I'm afraid I'm not going to get what I want. Okay, so in order to fix that, I go back to the universe gives me everything that I want. In this case, my girlfriend wants to break up with me, or that guy wants to do this, or this country doesn't want, whatever it is. If I accept the reality that I'm not getting what I want, and I ask myself, is there a constructive way to get what I want, i.e. become a politician, go to law school, change the law, if I can't do that, then I accept things the way that they are. And if I know what I want, and if I can own what I want, and I can work through my pain, like for instance, for an example, Austin. In my judgment, it's my judgment, it may not be true, but in my judgment, Austin's need to hold on to this idea of anarchy is because he feels hurt. He feels unheard. He feels that he's not loved. He feels like his feelings aren't being taken seriously, that he's not seen by his parents for who he really is, and therefore anybody in authority, including me, in this case, I'm not seeing him for who he is. I don't see his essence. I don't accept him. And if he can see that and then heal that within himself, he won't need to project that onto me, and he won't care whether or not I'm an anarchist or a Republican or, there was a point in time when we didn't care if somebody was a Republican or Democrat because it was just so minuscule. It was about, fiscal conservatism, and should there be, a socialist, by the way, Social Security, that's where the word social comes from, is a socialist institution. Socialism is we take care of each other. That's what Austin doesn't realize it, but he's arguing for socialism. Now, communists have used the word socialism in a way we don't like, so socialism to us means communism, but it doesn't. It just means that I take my taxes and I put my taxes towards something, and now everybody has health care like they do in Australia. That's a socialist thing. Well, why is that wrong? The only thing that would make that wrong is if you could show that, like a lot of people want to show, that socialist medicine doesn't work. Yet, there's no shortage of examples of where it doesn't work, but there's also plenty of examples of people who can't afford it getting all kinds of, stuff that they wouldn't get otherwise, which I don't get. I'm in Australia. I'm not going to get that because I'm not a citizen. I have to pay out of my money. I have to pay cash for anything, or I have to go and buy some kind of insurance for if I want some kind of medical procedure done. It's all socialism. And that's what politics used to be. No, it should be, we pay for ourselves, or no, we should have a socialist thing. And then they talk about it, and then in the middle, they make it work. That's what politics used to be. It has been back and forth. And now it's about all kinds of fucking crazy bullshit. Jacob Hoy question. Okay, I already answered that question. God Emperor question. Okay, answered that question. Jacob Hoy question. I tend to jump around the different spiritual teachings and amass knowledge. I think I really know what I need to do, but I'm too scared to do it. That's not a question. What are you asking me? I mean, if you have a question about that, I'll answer it for you. I mean, there's not a question in there, but I mean, my response to that is, well, why don't you try something different? Why don't you try something different? If that's not working for you, why don't you take action? Why don't you are afraid, so accept that you're afraid. It's okay to be afraid. And if what you're saying is, I don't think my fear is serving me, then you say, okay, I know that I'm afraid, and this is how I've been acting. I jump around to the different spiritual teachings and amass knowledge. And then, in other words, you're also saying, but I don't really follow one path or follow anybody's instructions. So I really think I really know what I need to do, but I'm too scared to do it. So then now that you know that you're afraid, then what would somebody who isn't scared to do it, what would they do? So in this case, I use my brother as an example. I don't even know if my brother's alive or not. Last time I spoke with him was 7 years ago, and that was over the phone. And before that, the last time I physically saw him was when he was threatening to shoot me with a gun. And he was just so destructive, and I just said, I'm done. I never want to see him again. You don't get to threaten. Didn't have a gun at me. He was threatening to go get his gun and shoot me. And after that, I just said, you don't deserve to be in my life, and so that's it. And but anyway, that's neither here nor there. But last I heard of him, he was homeless, and he was sick. He didn't have any identification, and he was in a really bad state. And he's 5 years older than me, so he's over 60 now. And being 60 and old and sick and homeless, that's no place anybody wants to be. And I've known him my whole life, obviously, because I grew up with him. And he is full of fear, and he doesn't trust anybody, and everybody did it to him. In fact, if you were to sit him down, he would tell you all the ways that I've ruined his life. And I'm his little brother. I'm 5 years younger than him. How could I have possibly ruined anything in his life? He had the same opportunities that I had. He could have been anything. My parents would have put him through any school he wanted, any university. He could have been anything he wanted to be. And he never left home. He went to the army, and he was in the boot camp, and then he was injured and got to leave boot camp early and come home, and he never went back, and he never left home. Ended up losing his job, and he stayed at home the whole time. Up until my mom, after my dad died, up until my mom became incapable of taking care of herself, and then my uncle, my dad's brother, stepped in and kicked my brother out. Said, your mom can't afford to take care of you now. You got to take care of yourself. He's been homeless ever since. And he's refused to take any kind of help. I've learned a lot about that homeless people in the United States have all kinds of options. There's all kinds of different ways for them to get themselves up off their feet and, get a place to live. If you're sick, like my brother, who has this physical thing that is stress related, he could get, like $1,000 a month minimum just to live. And he'd get all of his health care for free. And he chose not to do any of those things. The point I'm trying to make is that he and I were born in the same house. We were programmed by the same parents. He made different choices than I did his whole life. He always made choices based on his fear. And so because I lived with him, because I grew up in the same house, and because I can hear his voice in my head, whenever I'm afraid, like you are, like you need to do something but you're afraid to do it, whenever I have that, I ask my brother in my head. And I say, what would you do? And I listen to what he would say, and then I do the exact opposite. Because what he does is what he got is result of what he does, not how he feels. Bear in mind, my brother and I have the same immediate emotional reactions to just about everything. We're very similar in the way that we think. I make a lot of choices and decisions that are 100% opposite what I feel. A lot of the time. And then, of course, lots of things have changed in my mind since then, but my fear-based response is the same as his. I don't want to be him. I don't want anything he has. So I'm going to do everything, even if it's the most frightening thing there is to do. I'll do the opposite. So you're scared to do it, but you know what you're supposed to do? Great. Be as scared as you want to be. Now go do what you know you're supposed to do. Did I answer your question? Starseed, question. People say that benevolent ETs are guiding... Come on. People say that benevolent ETs are guiding Trump. In your opinion, do you think that is true, or is it all fake and lies? Let me ask you a question. When Trump said, when you're a celebrity, you can get away with everything, and I just walk up to women and grab them by the pussy. I just kiss them. I just do whatever I want to them because I can get away with it. Do you think that he was being guided by benevolent ETs? Come on. What kind of horseshit is that? Is this that QAnon nonsense? Starseed? Come on. You're not that stupid. You can't possibly be that inaccurate. Austin Watley. Okay, let me see. Austin, something he said was hidden. I don't know why. All right, let me see here. So I'm going to call bullshit on what you said because you said it earlier, and I'm going to bring it to your attention. There's a little bit of bullshit. You're not being completely honest here. Let's see. He says, you didn't offend me, and yes, I'm young. I never said that I offended you. I never thought that I offended you. But I'm glad that I didn't. You didn't offend me, and yes, I am young, 25 to be exact. Okay? I had a lot of similar thoughts when I was 25. Also, I wasn't kissing your ass. I meant the compliments. Okay. Good. Before the however, I'm not trying to control you. All right, so you can mean what you said and still have been manipulative. I mean, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. My ex-fiance who passed away, who was one of the most smartest people I've ever met, she would say you have to have a sandwich. You want to get something from somebody, you have to have a sandwich. You give them a compliment, and then you tell them the unpleasant part, and then you give them another compliment. It doesn't mean it's not manipulative. But you also said something to the effect of, I'm just pushing you to find out the truth, and like you do, and that's not accurate. That's not what you were doing. That wasn't what I do. There wasn't anything unusual in what you did. I have a higher standard for I think, an honest interaction between people, which goes beyond the social norms. So in regular society, what I expect of you, which is to tell me your honest feelings, that's not going to work in average society. Most people can't handle your honest feelings. You can't walk up to your partner or to your boss and say, I am feeling murderously rageful at you right now. You can't get away with that. People don't know the difference between your feelings and your actions. I'm different, so I'm asking you to do more. So yeah, I'm being harsh with you. You weren't operating outside of the social norms, but you weren't entirely, completely, deeply honest and authentic, which I want to create a different space in here for people to do that. So that you can have the ability to analyze yourself. I mean, you're not my student, you're not my apprentice. If you were my apprentice, we would have longer talks about it. I'd be less direct with you and all that kind of stuff. You're a subscriber and you watch my channel. So I have a limited amount of time. So I want to slap reality into you as fast as possible. And most of the time, that's going to be harsh for a lot of people, and some people can't hear it. But the other 90% of the people watching, if they're able to put their projections aside, when I say something to somebody, like with you, Austin, what happened was I was talking to somebody else about anarchism, and you projected onto that person. What I was saying to that person bothered you, and so you felt it necessary to give me unsolicited advice, which I didn't ask for, which is what that means. And then, but what you really wanted to say was what you said to that other person applied to me because I believe that, and that makes me feel this, that, and the other thing. And that's the way to interact with me. You didn't know that. Most people don't, and that's okay, but I'm still going to show it to you. So, you don't need to double down and you don't need to defend yourself. I want you to try and listen to what I'm saying. I understand your need to want to try and correct me on not seeing you accurately, and you want me to see you the right way because you want to be seen. This is your need to be seen by your mom and dad, to be accepted by your mom and dad, by society as a whole. And you want me to do that. But I already do see you. I know you don't think I do, but trust me, I do. I see you, I understand you, I empathize with you, I relate to you. So you don't need to double down and make me understand. I think I have a pretty good handle on what's going on and what you're feeling. Evan Price, and you are trying to control me, and I'm not judging that either. Everybody tries to control everybody at some point, and it's just a question of whether or not you're aware of it. If you're aware of it, you say to somebody, I want you to do this because it makes me feel this way. That's trying to control somebody, but at least you're being democratic about it. And then you're giving them the option to either accept it or reject it. When you start throwing this, that you're afraid, Mahadeva, of this, and you don't understand what it means, and let me tell you what that means, it's because you're trying to control my thoughts and my feelings so that you'll feel better. You'll feel safer. And I just would rather you own your control, because then I'll tell you, no, I don't want to do that, or yes, you're right, maybe I should do that. It's just a deeper level of understanding. You're not operating out of you're not operating in some weird, really negative, really controlling in terms of the average person. I'm raising the bar for everybody. So when I use the word you're trying to control me, I'm just bringing out the natural things that everybody do in society, and I'm just lifting the cover a little bit so that you can see. And the only reason I do that is so that you can have a better understanding of yourself, so that you can have that connection to the universe, and you can have everything and be happy and learn and grow. And that means being an independent person. I'm an independent person. Yeah, my citizenship is the United States, but I'm a citizen of the world. I'm going to go wherever the hell I want to go, where I feel comfortable, and I'm going to do everything in my power to see everybody as my family. I mean, Australians and Californians are almost identical, so I really don't feel a whole hell of a lot of difference. But if I were some other place, completely different culture, I would try and see them as my brothers and sisters and moms and dads, and I would respect their culture and their laws, not because I believe in politics or laws or government, but because that's how it works there, and that's, you know what I mean? All right, what else? Evan Price question. I've been wearing a lot of layers of clothes due to the cold weather. When doing the rub down after the celestial qigong, should I strip off some of my layers of clothes? I don't know. Do you want to? I don't know why you would need to. You can do it through your clothes. I don't have an answer. I don't have a druthers. I don't care one way or another. Do what's comfortable for you. God Emperor. Now he's going to tell me what his honest feelings are. My honest feeling is I'm afraid of the Antifa BLM. Black Lives Matter. All right, I'm with you so far. I'm okay that you have that feeling. I've never heard them riot, burn stuff down the lockdowns. I've heard them riot and burn stuff down. All right, that would frighten me too. I won't lie to you, that would frighten me. I lived through the Los Angeles riots. Second one, there was one in the 60s, right when I was born, I think in 1963 or 64. And then I had a theater company in Hollywood, which I don't know what it's like there, but Hollywood and La Brea back then was a nasty part of town. And we were rehearsing, and the riots were going on, the Rodney King riots. And somebody came in and said, we have to leave. And because we didn't know, we weren't watching television or listening to the radio. We didn't know what was going on. We were just rehearsing and said, no, we have to leave. I mean, they're burning down the city. You guys got to get out. And I had to pick my way down side streets, because if you went down that street, there was a bunch of guys with, sticks and fires, and I had to hide because I was a white guy. And there was a guy named Reginald Denny. Remember him? Guy got yanked out of his truck and got beaten almost to death just because he was white and happened to be in South Central LA. So I know riots are a scary thing. I wasn't there in the States, so I don't know what was going on during any of those riots. But I tell you, it's just as scary. It's just as scary watching the Proud Boys or watching the neo-Nazis with torches walk around, and they're neo-Nazis driving through crowds of people of all colors and killing them. I mean, it's happening on all sides. So you're being selective about what you're afraid of. That's obviously got a racial tint to it. I'm not going to judge you if you can say your feelings about that. I'm scared of black people because I'm white and I'm afraid they're going to hurt me. If you say that, I'm not going to judge you for that. But then we can both sit down and talk about what actions you should take based on that feeling. So I've heard them riot and burn stuff down. The lockdowns scare me so much. I feel like Trump is the only man that stands between the madness and order. Right, those are your feelings. So own those feelings, accept them, and now that you know that you and everybody else has an emotional agenda, now be willing to see what your emotional agendas and reality, how they line up. The lockdown, which by the way they've had here in Australia to success. I'm so lucky that I'm in Queensland, Australia. They have lockdowns. They're still going back and forth with lockdowns in different parts of the country. Whenever it pops up, 1 or 2 cases, they lock everything down. And the result is I get to walk around without a mask, and I get to talk to people and hug people, and I get to eat in restaurants, and because there's no COVID here. You know why? Because they locked everything down. I said in the beginning, watch my videos. If you go back 9 months, I said, here's what's going to happen. The United States, because the United States can't stand being told what to do, they're not going to lock down. Half of the people are going to lock down and the other half aren't. Some states will, some states won't. And the worst thing to do is to do neither. Now, back then, it looked like you had 2 choices. You either let the thing go rampant and you tried to achieve herd immunity, or you locked down and you tried to starve it out. There's only 2 choices. The middle path is the worst. And the doctors were saying that 9 months ago, and people were saying, oh, the pandemic, and oh, they're just putting fear. And the doctors are saying, no, if we don't lock down and we just do this half measures and we're not doing either, it's going to make it worse. That's what's going to keep it going and make the cases the worst ever. And that's exactly what happened. And I came on here and I said that, and people climbed up my ass and said, oh, the pandemic, and oh, you're a shill, and blah, blah, blah. It's exactly what happened. And here they locked everything down. And there's almost nothing here in this country. I said the United States won't be able to do that because of, number one, you've got this huge country. You don't have one central government. You have a bunch of state governments. And you have the majority of people don't like being told what to do. United States citizens haven't liked being told what to do for over 200 years. They don't like being told what to do now. You know, what's funny is that the Antifa guys and the pro-Trump guys have the same issue. They don't like being told what to do. And they're beating the crap out of each other. And they both have the same issue. They just don't like being told what to do. People here in Australia, they don't like being told what to do either, but there's this feeling of civic unity, and there's people that have a problem with it, but the majority of people, pull their nutsack up and they follow the rules to be a good citizen of their country, and it works out really well. There's a bunch of reasons why I'm here. Let's see, who's that? Let's see, what else? So let's see, what else did you say? I feel like Trump is the only man that stands between madness and order. What the hell do you have going on now? You've got absolute, total madness. He is provoking it. He provokes the Proud Boys and neo-Nazis, and he provokes demonstrations in the street. He provokes and encourages people to threaten violence to people just because they happen to be, somebody who counts votes and the votes came out the way they didn't like. He has done nothing about the coronavirus. You say he stands for order, and yet he refuses to do anything in terms of social distancing or wearing masks. So even though that's your feeling, the objective reality is something totally different. What that tells me is that you have an unresolved emotional agenda. This is the problem. When you have an unresolved emotional agenda, you go off of your feelings, which blinds you to seeing what's objectively going on, which means that you end up creating the opposite of what you think you want. So what you're saying in there without realizing it is that you're afraid of the Antifa and you're afraid of the Black Lives Matter, but you're not afraid of the Proud Boys and you're not afraid of the neo-Nazis because they're on your side. So it's okay if they go beat somebody else up or if they disenfranchise somebody else as long as you're okay. That's the objective reality that you're not seeing because of your emotional agenda. And if you can think about your fear of differences, your fear of whatever it is, and own it, and then know and ask yourself, the question when it comes to critical thinking, because you say, do I have an emotional agenda here? Yes, I do. I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. Then you say, oh, great. Now, do those feelings keep me from seeing objective reality? Yes or no? You have to be willing to be wrong. You have to be willing to see, do the Black Lives Matter people have something to say? And they do. I mean, it's a fact. Is somebody, if they're a black nationalist, does that, what's his name? Whatever the guy's name is, I forget his name. You know who I'm talking about. The leader of, the Black Panthers or whatever the hell it is. Is that guy scary? Yeah. Does he represent freedom for me? No. He's racist. He's anti-white. So that excludes me. I don't like that. But does that mean that every black person or every white person who's supporting BLM, does that mean that these people don't have reason to be upset? It's just you're choosing which side of unfairness you want to be a part of. The disorder is already there. It just depends on what side you're on. Again, I mean, we could talk about, the founding fathers and the freedom of the United States, and we could talk about democracy, and we could paint the narrative of 1776. The United States rebelled against the king, and because he was a tyrant, and really it was just because they didn't want to pay taxes for a war that they didn't feel they should pay for. That's really all it was about. We fought a war, meaning us, the British Empire and the United States, fought a war against the French and the Indians, I think it was. And then some rich guys in Britain who didn't want to pay for it said, well, let's make the Americans pay for it. The American colonists. Let's make them pay for it. Let's tax them. And they said, we fought in it with you guys. We died in it too. We don't want to pay taxes on that. And so they and that gave the opportunity for rich landowners to say, hey, we can just completely be free to make as much money as we want. So let's rebel. Does that mean that they were wrong for rebelling? I don't know. But does that mean that it created this free society? Hell fucking no, it didn't. If you were a white Anglo-Saxon male landowner, you had all this freedom and democracy. If you were a woman, if you were black, if you were Native American, if you were, at some stages, if you were Irish. So let's cut the bullshit. It all depends on whether or not it's serving your emotional agendas. But the thing about that is if you side with one side based on, I like the way they talk, and these guys are white and they're helping me out, and okay, they're not, but those Black Lives Matter guys, you're going to end up on the other side of that at some point. I talk about this in one of my other videos, but I say be careful about being racist in any way, because what ended up happening in Europe is that you had these white, primitive, tribal people. They looked totally different. They had blue eyes, and they had red hair, and they had white skin, and they didn't use the same alphabet, and they were the most primitive. They lived in this jungle, which now we call Germania or Germany, which now it's not a jungle anymore, but it was a jungle. I mean, you couldn't the Romans couldn't get their army in there, and these guys lived the most primitive life. To the Romans, they thought these guys were savages. And there was a racial difference. People in Southern Europe were dark-skinned, olive-skinned, dark hair, and these guys in Europe were white-skinned and all that. They were totally different. And they used them in all kinds of different ways, and they fought against them, and they enslaved them. And those guys ended up taking over the Roman Empire. They ended up becoming refugees, just like the Mexican, the border issue, the whole reason Trump wants to create a wall for the same reason. You got a bunch of refugees trying to escape political and economic hardship, and they want to be part of the United States. Same thing happened to our ancestors. They amassed on the border of the Roman Empire, and the Romans said, hey, and they put them in a concentration camp. We're not taught this in history. They put these blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Germanic people into huge concentration camps, and then they took all the men of fighting age and put them in the army and put them as a human shield, so that they would go out first fighting all their Germanic relatives. And the guys that came back were the baddest fighters in the Roman Empire. They learned all of the Roman tactics for fighting. They came back and they saw that their mothers and their children and their grandparents were being held in these concentration camps, and that parents were selling their children to the Roman soldiers as slaves just so that they could eat dog meat. And these people wanted freedom. And they asked, can you just let us, we'll change our religion, we'll change our language, our culture, we will integrate, we'll do whatever the hell you want. Just let us in. And the Romans said no, and these guys rebelled, and guess who's running the world now? Guess who's running all of Southern Europe? And so I say, be careful. You oppress somebody, they're going to end up ruling the world. And if you're on the other side of the Black Lives Matter thing, you're gonna have a completely different viewpoint on things. All right, so I don't see a whole lot of. Do I see a lot of questions? Anyway, I got to get off because my landlords are here, so I actually got to give them some money and talk to them. So anyway, 90-day challenge. Go check that out. thunderwizard.com. And I've just installed level 2. So give me another 90 days and we'll have level 3. And let's see what else. I don't know what else. That's it. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry I have to cut things short, but there it is. Keep your eyes peeled. And by the way, when it comes to subscribing to the 90-day challenge, I recommend that you wait until after the first of the year, and then I recommend that you subscribe for a year because you'll get 2 months off. I recommend you do that at the beginning of the year. If you're already subscribed, wait till the first of the year and then upgrade to the year. You'll get 2 months off. You'll have paid for the entire year. You won't have to worry about it. Give yourself that gift. It'll be worth it. That's all. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you guys later.